The warning beacon screamed across 17 star systems in one terrible moment. Captain Sarah Chen watched her command bridge dissolve into chaos as the alert klaxons wailed. Red lights bathed everything in the color of blood. Her crew, humans, Altarians, and even a few loyal Vegan traders, scrambled to their stations with practiced efficiency, born from 3 years of border patrol duty. Report. Sarah's voice cut through the noise like a blade. Lieutenant Marcus Webb, her tactical officer, hunched over his console. His fingers danced across holographic displays that flickered with incoming data streams. Ma'am, we're receiving priority alpha transmissions from the Kepler station. The Zephyrian Empire just glassed New Geneva. The words hit the bridge like a physical blow. Sarah felt her stomach drop into some cold, dark place. New Geneva. Population, 4 million souls. Her sister's family lived there. Glassed. The word came out as barely a whisper. Orbital bombardment, Captain. Complete surface sterilization. Webb's voice cracked. The Empire's 9th Fleet moved in without warning. No evacuation protocols, no surrender demands. They just started firing. Sarah's hands gripped the armrests of her command chair until her knuckles went white. Around her, the bridge had gone silent except for the soft hum of life support systems and the distant wail of emergency sirens echoing through the ship's corridors. For 70 years, humanity had played by the galactic rules. They'd joined the Cosmic Trade Federation, signed the non-aggression accords, and bent over backward to prove they belonged among the stars. Earth's colonies had flourished. Human diplomats had mediated conflicts between alien species. They'd been model citizens of the galaxy. And the Zephyrian Empire had just murdered 4 million of them for sport. Captain, came a new voice from behind her. Dr. Elena Vasquez, the ship's chief science officer and resident alien culture expert, stepped onto the bridge. Her dark eyes held a grim certainty that made Sarah's blood run cold. I've been monitoring Empire communication channels. This wasn't random. Explain. New Geneva was a test. They wanted to see how humanity would respond to unprovoked genocide. Elena's voice carried the weight of someone who'd spent decades studying the Empire's brutal expansion tactics. Intelligence suggests they're planning similar strikes on 12 other human colonies. The bridge erupted in angry voices. Crew members shouted questions and curses in 3 different languages, but Sarah heard none of it. Her mind had gone to a place beyond rage, beyond grief. A place cold and calculating. Communications, she said quietly. Get me Admiral Harrison on Terra Station. Emergency channel. Aye, Captain. The main view screen flickered to life, revealing the weathered face of Admiral Janet Harrison. Behind her, Sarah could see the frantic activity of Terra Station's command center. Officers rushed between stations carrying data tablets and shouting, "Orders, Sarah," the Admiral said without preamble. "I assume you've heard. New Geneva, 4 million dead. What are our orders?" Harrison's expression hardened. "As of 30 minutes ago, the Terran Defense Council has voted unanimously. We're implementing Protocol Omega." Sarah felt her breath catch. Protocol Omega. She'd read about it in classified briefings but never imagined it would actually be used. It was the nuclear option. The end of everything they'd built in space. Complete border closure. Harrison continued. Every human ship, every human citizen, every human asset in the galaxy has 48 hours to return to Sol system. After that, we're sealing the borders. Nothing gets in. Nothing gets out. Admiral, with respect, that's impossible. We have colonies spread across 40 systems, trade agreements with a dozen species. Our entire economy is about to become irrelevant, Captain. Harrison's voice cut like steel. The Empire crossed a line they can't uncross. They wanted to see what happens when you murder 4 million humans for no reason. They're about to find out. The transmission ended, leaving Sarah staring at her own reflection in the dark screen. Around her, the bridge crew waited in stunned silence. "Well," said Webb finally, "I guess we're going home." But as Sarah looked out at the stars stretching endlessly in all directions, she wondered if they'd ever truly have a home to return to. The Empire had just declared war on humanity without even knowing it, and humanity was about to disappear from the galaxy entirely. Chapter 2. The Exodus begins. The next 18 hours passed in a blur of desperate activity. Sarah's ship, the Defiant Dawn, had become a mobile command center coordinating the largest evacuation in human history. Her communications officer, Ensign Rita Nakamura, hadn't left her station since the crisis began. Her voice was hoarse from relaying orders to merchant vessels, colony transports, and military ships scattered across known space. "Captain, we've got a problem," Nakamura called out. "The civilian transport, New Horizon, is reporting engine failures in the Proxima system. They're carrying 12,000 evacuees from the mining colonies." Sarah rubbed her temples where a massive headache was building. On her tactical display, she could see the real-time status of humanity's exodus. Green dots represented ships successfully moving toward Sol system. Yellow dots were ships with minor delays or mechanical issues. Red dots. There were too many red dots. "What's their condition?" Sarah asked. "Hyperdrive is completely offline. Conventional engines are running at 30%. At their current speed, they won't reach the Sol system for 6 months. Dr. Vasquez looked up from her station where she'd been monitoring alien news feeds. "Captain, we're already seeing reactions from other species. The Altarian Council is demanding explanations. The Vegan Trade Consortium is threatening to freeze all human assets, and the Empire," she paused. "The Empire is mobilizing additional fleets. They think we're bluffing," Sarah realized. "They think this is some kind of negotiation tactic." "Are we?" asked Webb quietly. Before Sarah could answer, Admiral Harrison's voice crackled over the ship's communication system. She was broadcasting on all human frequencies, her message reaching every human ship, station, and settlement in the galaxy simultaneously. "This is Admiral Harrison to all human vessels and installations. I know many of you think this is temporary, that we'll negotiate, that cooler heads will prevail." Her voice carried across the void with absolute certainty. "You're wrong. As of this moment, Earth's government has severed all diplomatic relations with the Cosmic Trade Federation. We're withdrawing from every treaty, every trade agreement, every mutual defense pact. Humanity is coming home and we're closing the door behind us." Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. This wasn't a tactical retreat. This was total isolation. "Furthermore," Harrison continued, "I'm authorized to inform you that Project Fortress has been activated. The rumors you've heard are true. Earth has been preparing for this day for decades. When our borders close, they won't just be closed. They'll be impenetrable." The transmission ended, leaving Sarah's bridge in stunned silence. "Project Fortress," Webb whispered. "I thought that was just a myth." Sarah had heard the whispers too. Stories about secret research facilities hidden in Earth's asteroid belt. About weapons that could fold space itself. About defense systems that existed beyond known physics. She'd always assumed they were just stories. But as she watched the systematic evacuation of humanity from the galaxy, she was beginning to realize that Earth had been planning for this possibility for a very long time. "Captain," Nakamura's voice interrupted her thoughts. "Priority transmission from the New Horizon. Their situation is deteriorating." Sarah made a decision that would haunt her dreams for years to come. "Signal the rescue fleet. All available ships are to converge on Proxima system. We're not leaving 12,000 people behind." "Ma'am, that will delay the evacuation by at least 6 hours. The deadline." "The deadline can go to hell, Ensign. We don't abandon our own." But even as she gave the order, Sarah knew they were racing against more than just time. Across the galaxy, alien governments were beginning to understand that humanity wasn't negotiating. They were leaving. Forever. And that realization was making some very powerful people very nervous. On her long-range sensors, Sarah detected the first signs of what was coming. A massive Zephyrian battle fleet had changed course and was now heading directly toward Sol system. The Empire wasn't going to let humanity leave quietly. Chapter 3. The Siege of Sol, the Defiant Dawn, limped into Sol system with her hull scarred by plasma burns and her crew running on their last reserves of strength. Behind them, strung out across a dozen light years, came the remnants of humanity's galactic presence. merchant vessels overloaded with refugees, military escorts running on fumes, colony ships carrying the entire populations of worlds that had been home for generations, and pursuing them all came the largest alien armada ever assembled. Jesus Christ, Webb breathed as the tactical display updated. They've got to have over 3,000 ships out there. Sarah studied the holographic representation of local space. The Zephyrian Empire's 9th, 12th, and 3rd fleets formed the core of the massive force. But they weren't alone. Ships from a dozen different species had joined the armada: the Altarian Royal Navy, vegan corporate security fleets, even the normally peaceful trading guild had contributed vessels. Why? Asked Nakamura. Why are they all working together to stop us from leaving? Dr. Vasquez answered from her science station, her voice grim with understanding. Because they're terrified. For 70 years, humans have been the galaxy's diplomats, mediators, and peacekeepers. We've prevented 17 major wars and mediated hundreds of trade disputes. Without us, the galaxy tears itself apart, Sarah finished. They need us to maintain the balance of power. And we're about to vanish behind a wall they can't breach, Webb added. The main view screen shifted to show Earth itself, that beautiful blue marble that had given birth to their species. But something was different. The planet was surrounded by a shimmering field of energy that bent light and space around it. Even as Sarah watched, the field was expanding outward, past Luna, past Mars, reaching toward the asteroid belt. My God, whispered Dr. Vasquez. They actually did it. Project Fortress isn't just a defense system, it's a dimensional barrier. They're literally removing Sol system from normal space-time. Admiral Harrison's voice echoed across all frequencies, reaching both the incoming human refugees and the alien armada that followed them. This is Admiral Harrison of the Terran Defense Force. To all human vessels, you have 4 hours to cross the barrier before it becomes impermeable. To all alien vessels, you have 4 hours to withdraw beyond the heliopause or be trapped on the wrong side of history. The response from the alien fleet was immediate and predictable. Weapons powered up across 3,000 ships, the largest military force in galactic history prepared to assault Sol system. But as Sarah watched, something impossible began to happen. Ships started disappearing, not destroyed, not retreating, simply gone. One moment, a Zephyrian dreadnought, would be there on sensors. The next moment, empty space. Captain, Webb's voice was tight with confusion. I'm reading massive gravitational anomalies throughout the system. It's like space itself is folding. Sarah's communications console erupted with desperate signals from the alien fleet. Ships reporting navigation failures. Entire squadrons losing contact with their command vessels. Panic spreading through the armada as they realized they weren't fighting an enemy they could see or understand. This is the Zephyrian Fleet Admiral Keshatar, came a transmission on an open channel. Terran forces, we demand an immediate cessation of whatever weapon you're employing. The Cosmic Accords forbid the use of the transmission cut off mid-sentence. On Sarah's tactical display, Admiral Keshatar's flagship simply vanished. Where did they go? Asked Nakamura. Dr. Vasquez was running complex calculations on her science console, her face pale with the implications of what she was seeing. If I'm reading this correctly, they're being displaced through higher dimensional space. The ships aren't destroyed, they're just elsewhere. Scattered across the galaxy, probably. Sarah felt a cold certainty settle in her chest. This wasn't just a defense system, this was a demonstration. Humanity was showing the galaxy exactly what they were capable of when pushed too far. All human vessels, came Admiral Harrison's voice, again. Final warning. You have 90 minutes to reach the barrier. After that, we cannot guarantee your safety. Sarah looked at her crew, her family, and saw the same mix of awe and terror reflected in their faces. Humanity had just made the entire Zephyrian armada disappear without firing a shot. But as the defiant dawn raced toward the growing barrier around Sol system, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that they were crossing more than just a dimensional threshold. They were crossing into a future where humanity would stand completely alone among the stars. Chapter 4. Beyond the Veil. The moment the defiant dawn crossed the barrier, Sarah felt it in her bones. Reality shifted. The stars outside the viewports flickered and rearranged themselves into patterns that hurt to look at directly. Space itself seemed to bend and twist around Sol System like a protective cocoon woven from the fabric of the universe. Report. Sarah managed, fighting off a wave of nausea that came from her inner ear trying to process impossible physics. All systems nominal, Webb reported, though his voice sounded strange, echoing as if coming from very far away. But Captain, look at this. The main view screen showed Sol System as they'd never seen it before. Earth still hung in its familiar orbit, but now it was surrounded by structures that definitely hadn't been there an hour ago. Massive platforms floated in space between the planets, bristling with technology that seemed to bend light around itself. Ships moved between these platforms, ships unlike anything in Sarah's experience. Those aren't human designs, Dr. Vasquez said quietly. At least not any human designs I've ever seen. Admiral Harrison's voice came over the communication system, but now it carried undertones that seemed to resonate in dimensions Sarah couldn't name. Welcome home, Captain Chen. Please dock at Luna Station, we have a lot to discuss. Luna Station had always been humanity's primary military installation in the Earth-Moon system, but as the defiant dawn approached, Sarah realized the Luna Station she knew was gone. In its place floated a structure that seemed to exist partially in normal space and partially elsewhere. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. The docking procedures felt normal enough, but Sarah noticed her crew moving differently, as if the artificial gravity had subtly changed properties. Everything felt more solid, more real, as if they'd been living in a pale shadow of existence and had only now stepped into true reality. Admiral Harrison met them at the airlock personally. She looked the same, but there was something in her eyes that hadn't been there before, a depth of knowledge that seemed ancient despite her relatively young face. How long have you known? Sarah asked without preamble. Known what, Captain? That humanity could do this, that we had this power. Harrison gestured for them to follow her through corridors that seemed to stretch further than they should, past windows that showed impossible views of Earth floating in a sea of twisted starlight. We've suspected for about 200 years, Harrison said finally, ever since the first human psionics started manifesting, ever since we realized that human consciousness could directly interface with quantum fields in ways that other species simply cannot. They entered a briefing room where a holographic display showed the current state of the galaxy. Sarah gasped. Where Sol System should have been, there was simply nothing. Not empty space, but an absence so complete it seemed to exist in negative dimensions. The galaxy thinks we're gone, Harrison continued. Completely gone. They can't detect us, can't reach us, can't even remember exactly where Sol System used to be. To them, humanity has simply been erased from existence. But we're still here, Webb said. We're here. We're just not there anymore, if that makes sense. Harrison touched a control and the display zoomed out to show the entire galaxy. What you're seeing is the result of 70 years of careful preparation. While humanity was playing the part of peaceful diplomats and traders, our best scientists were secretly developing technology that could remove us from normal space-time entirely. Dr. Vasquez leaned forward. The refugee crisis, the evacuation, it was all planned. Not the trigger, Harrison admitted. We'd hoped never to use Project Fortress, but we'd been preparing for the possibility that the galaxy might eventually see humanity as a threat rather than an asset. The Empire's attack on New Geneva just gave us the excuse we needed. Sarah felt a growing unease. Admiral, what exactly have we become? Harrison's expression grew serious. Something new, Captain. Something that's never existed before in this galaxy. We're not bound by the laws of physics that govern other species. We exist partially outside of normal reality. And that gives us capabilities that... She paused. That frightened even me sometimes. The holographic display shifted to show real-time intelligence from beyond the barrier. The galaxy was in chaos. Without humanity's diplomatic influence, 3 major wars had already begun. Trade routes were collapsing. Entire civilizations were reverting to isolationism and militarism. They need us, Sarah realized. They need us, Harrison agreed. But they also fear what we've become. And honestly, Captain, they should fear us. Because what we are now... She gestured at the impossible architecture visible through the briefing room's windows. What we are now is so far beyond what they can comprehend that we might as well be gods to them. Sarah looked out at Earth, still hanging in its orbit but now surrounded by rings of light that pulsed with energies that had no names in any scientific textbook. Humanity had achieved perfect security, perfect isolation, perfect power. But as she watched her homeworld spinning in its cocoon of twisted space-time, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that they'd also achieved something else. Perfect loneliness. Epilogue. The long silence. 1 year later. Captain Sarah Chen stood on the observation deck of her new ship, the Dimensional Drift, and watched Earth turn slowly below her. The planet looked peaceful, almost serene, surrounded by its impossible architecture of folded space and quantum barriers. But Sarah had learned that peace and serenity were not the same thing. The reports from her scout missions beyond the barrier painted a clear picture. The galaxy was tearing itself apart without humanity's stabilizing influence. The Zephyrian Empire had fragmented into 17 warring factions. The Altarian Council had dissolved into chaos. Entire species had retreated into their home systems and sealed their borders, creating dozens of smaller versions of what humanity had done to Sol System. "Any word from the diplomatic team?" asked Webb, who had requested transfer to Sarah's new command, rather than accept a cushy posting on one of the orbital platforms. "The same as always," Sarah replied. "The galaxy wants us back. They're willing to offer us anything. Entire star systems, seats on every governing council, technology they've never shared with outsiders. But they want us to come back as we were, as humans they can understand and control." "And that's impossible now." Sarah nodded. Over the past year, humanity had continued to evolve. Children born within the barrier displayed capabilities that defied explanation. They could see through dimensions, manipulate matter at the quantum level, and communicate across space without any technological assistance. The older generation was adapting too, but more slowly. They were becoming something beyond human, and there was no way to reverse the process. "Captain," came Dr. Vasquez's voice from behind them. She approached carrying a data tablet that displayed her latest research. "I've been analyzing the long-term implications of our isolation. If current trends continue, within 50 years we'll be so far beyond baseline humanity that we won't even be the same species." "Is that necessarily a bad thing?" Webb asked. "I don't know," Vasquez admitted. "But I do know that every species that's ever achieved this level of transcendence has eventually lost interest in the physical universe entirely. They exist, but they don't participate in galactic civilization. They become," she struggled for the right word, "observers, witnesses to existence, but no longer truly part of it." Sarah considered this as she watched a group of children playing in a nearby park. They moved with an uncanny grace, occasionally stepping through what appeared to be solid walls, or floating above the ground without any visible means of support. They were beautiful and alien and completely unlike the human children she remembered from before the barrier. "Admiral Harrison has called a council meeting," Sarah said finally. "The question of whether to maintain isolation or attempt limited contact is coming to a vote. How do you think it will go?" Sarah touched the viewport glass and watched her reflection overlap with the image of Earth below. "I think we're going to choose to remain alone. Because the truth is, we can't go back to what we were, and the galaxy isn't ready for what we've become." 3 days later, the Terran Council voted unanimously to maintain the barrier indefinitely. The galaxy would have to learn to exist without humanity, and humanity would have to learn to exist beyond the galaxy. In the depths of space around Sol System, the barrier pulsed with energies that existed in 17 different dimensions simultaneously. It was beautiful. It was impenetrable. It was eternal. And somewhere beyond it, among the stars that humanity had once called home, The galaxy slowly learned to forget that humans had ever existed at all. But in the quiet moments between heartbeats, in the spaces between thoughts, the universe itself remembered. And sometimes, just sometimes, reality would flicker in ways that suggested something vast and ancient and infinitely patient was watching from beyond the veil of normal space-time. Something that had once been human, something that might someday be willing to forgive or not. The end.